DreamMachine. My name is Arun.
And my name is Patricia.
And welcome to a very special episode. And also, this is an Arun Meta Show special as well, because let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. We have been through a marathon with DreamMachine and DreamWorks animation films. For those of you who do not know, me and Patricia have actually gone marathoned through every single DreamWorks animation film, with the exception of ones that are coming out soon, and so as of this date. And so we have now come to at least my favorite part of these series that we do, and that is that we are going to now name the top 5 best and top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films. So let me give you the rules of how all this works. So I put in my ratings and Patricia put in her ratings. Now, the last time we did this with PixMix, we ended up with an issue, which is that most of the films that we had, we rated 10, and obviously being Pixar. So we had to bring in a referee, which in the case of PixMix was Dan the Pixar fan. Now, for this particular episode that we're going to do, this very special finale that we're going to do for DreamMachine, we have asked all you guys listening to the show to chime in, and many of you have. And so we asked you to fill out a form to give ratings between 1 and 10 for every DreamWorks film. We're talking about from Ants all the way down to, what was the last one we reviewed? How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Yeah, that was the one. So we've done all those films, and we've asked you to all to rate them, and also we've put them all together, and so this is how the scoring works. So I carry 1/3 of the weight in regards to the scores. Patricia carries another 1/3 of the weight, and then you guys are the tiebreaker. So you guys are the other 1/3 of the ratings, and you guys, I have to say, have had a massive influence on what we're about to talk about. So before we actually go any further, shall we talk about the top 5? Actually, I'll tell you the top films that we rated 10, and so we could say are the favorites to get everyone feeling all hungry for the finale of our episode.
Yeah, let's do so.
Cool. Okay. These films, we rated 10 out of 10 in this series of DreamMachine with Arun and Patricia are the following: How to Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon 2, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, Kung Fu Panda 2, Shrek 2, and The Prince of Egypt.
Yes.
Those are the films that me and Patricia recommend out of the DreamWorks animation collection. So
yeah, and 3 of them are How to Train Your Dragon movies.
Yeah, all 3 of them are How to Train Your... Basically, all 3 of the How to Train Your Dragon movies. We've actually rated 10. So, yeah, that's the... I'll tell you what, actually, I think if we... obviously we're going to do something with Pixar and DreamWorks down the line, but, I think, is this the only... what other series have we actually... Was Toy Story the only other series we actually gave 10? Too, or I
think we gave The Incredibles a 10 as well.
They're not really a trio, are they? They're kind of like there's just 2 movies. But I'm trying to think of another bunch of series.
A trio, yeah. Toy Story is the only
yeah.
one that's had a trio. As of when we did PixMix the first time. Now it's 4 movies. But yeah, that's the only time in which we've dedicated all 10s to a trilogy of movies. And out of now Pixar has only had one movie that only had a trilogy or a quadrilogy as, a Toy Story. But yeah, DreamWorks has had at least 3 or 4. So the fact that only one of them was able to be so consistently good is astonishing.
Yeah. So, but before we can even get to, that's going to be at the end of the show, by the way, the top 5 best DreamWorks animated films judged by me, Patricia, and yourselves. Unfortunately, we have to basically go through the scrap and basically go through the shit. And
yay!
So we are going to do the top 5 worst DreamWorks animation films judged by myself, Patricia, and all of you. So, Patricia, have you got some really proper ironclad Wellington boots to wed through all this, swampy mess that we're about to go through?
Is that a hint to what number 5 is?
I'm not. No, I don't think it is. But I'm thinking. Well, let's go through them and let's see who kind of goes through that pretty much. And I think basically it's going to go into a fiery mess. I think at the very end of it all. So if that's a nod to one of the episodes, I'm sure someone already knows that already. But anyway, so let's get started. Okay, so number 5 in our top 5 worst DreamWorks animation films. This film had an average score between me and Patricia of 4.5 out of 10. This film now has an average score of 4.2 out of 10, thanks to all of you guys. The fifth worst DreamWorks animated film is Trolls.
Oh boy. We had a lot to say about this film. It was essentially like cashing in on the popularity of so many musicals, at the same time also cashing in on the popularity of the Lego movie. So it was like the Smurfs mixed in with Strange Magic and Sing and the Lego movie, like all crammed into one, and it wasn't remotely interesting whatsoever.
It's just this, it's really this uncomfortable sweetness. Like, do you remember that episode? Do you remember that? I'm sure I brought this up before, but do you remember that episode, the level in the Angry Video Game Nerd video game where like everything's really colorful and every bright and smiley, and like it's just really sickening to look at, and like yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. And so, and on top of that as well, like it's so borrowed, and like it's just like it doesn't feel very original when you really think about it. Like you got these you got this race that's trying to fight for like survival and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure we've seen that plot device, so many times. And also, I mean, on top of that as well, like, it borrows from Cinderella, it borrows from various other ones. It has really awful covers of, Junior, Senior, and Gorillaz, and various other songs as well. Like, I mean, even the original song that's sung by Justin Timberlake in this film, like, even that just doesn't feel all that great, really. Like, this feels like, given that Justin Timberlake won my heart over as an actor in The Social Network, this is the one movie that really turned me off his acting in this, and that is Trolls. And, I really wish he'd go back to doing kind of like, edgy, kind of like, docudramas, if you will. So,
and we cannot wait for Trolls World Tour.
You know what? I'm on the fence about that, because I really want to know, in regards to at least like the metal scene that they're going to bring into that, I want to know what these guys are like in regards to that, and how much. I mean, keep this in mind, they're the main enemy of the movie. So it's like, well, they're not really an enemy. Like, for me, I think rock and roll taking over the world is like, yeah, that's another thing as well. It borrows from that too. That whole shtick of like, if we don't do something about all this heavy metal, it's going to take over the world.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, this is a movie that seems to be trying to acquire to the boomer generation.
It kind of reminds me of Gem and the Holograms, in which you have the Misfits, who's like this rock band, and the Holograms, who's like this pop group, and they're going up against each other.
Yeah. It's oh my goodness. What is this aimed? What is Trolls World Tour aimed at? But here's the thing about this: it has just have some kind of chance to redeem itself. We are gonna have to watch this movie, by the way. Me and Patricia aren't gonna have much choice. We've dedicated ourselves to Dream Machine, and therefore that's what's gonna happen. But I mean, if they bring in Jack Black, who I think and they bring in like other like Slash, and they bring in like other people from like the metal scene, like I even accept Axl Rose, I guess. But, if they bring people in, like, from the proper metal scene, like Judas Priest and Metallica and people like that, and bring them in, like, voices and, like, let them do their shtick, in that, or maybe even bring in Kiss if you need to. I guess I'd stand Gene Simmons for, like, 5 minutes, maybe. But, I mean, if you can bring these guys in and make it, like, really cool in that way, I could probably sit through that. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So that was the fifth worst movie. Number 4. Me and Patricia gave this an average score of 3 out of 10. This now has an average score of 3.7 out of 10. It is Shrek Forever After.
Oh, man. Like, where do we even begin on how terrible this is? Now, here's the thing. Around the time in which I posted up the poll of which is the worst Shrek movie, Shrek the Third or Shrek Forever After, many people said that Shrek the Third was worse, because they said, at least with Shrek Forever After, it feels like a proper conclusion, and it was slightly funnier than Shrek the Third. But Aaron and I, we watched both of them simultaneously, and we concluded that the fourth one was the worst.
The fourth one was just boring. Like, it's just like, it's just basically just, It's a Wonderful Life, and with Rumpelstiltskin, as the main villain. It didn't feel like it was, and also on top of that as well, you knew that he was going to get his day, his day back, pretty much. And like, it didn't feel like it was taking much risk. And on top of that as well, you can easily tell it wasn't written by the original people who obviously were in who wrote the original Shrek, because they immediately kind of like default back to what Shrek kind of was like. Maybe so if anything, it feels more kind of like Shrek 1.5. In a way, because like I can't. The way he just kind of like at the beginning of the film, where he just kind of says, "Oh, I wish things went back to the way they were." It's like it's kind of like, well, that's a. I mean, are you aware that you and Fiona have like been through like 2 other adventures before this film? Like it just felt like a mess to me. Really?
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was a giant step backwards. Whereas the previous Shrek films wanted to up the ante, and they wanted to tell some really hilarious jokes while also telling a very sweet and compelling story involving with Shrek and Fiona. This one felt like it was supposed to be like an homage to itself. It's like, oh, we're going to have a whole bunch of callbacks to draw into people's nostalgia and stuff like that. Because this movie came out like over 9 years since the original film. And since this was going to be the last one, well, with spoilers, it's not, they decided that they wanted to like give it like a proper conclusion by saying, hey, we're going to have this big epic adventure, but at the same time, we're going to give callbacks to everything that you knew about from the previous Shrek films. And then we're just going to tie it up in a nice little bow, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, this would be kind of a movie that would kind of be written if Shrek went away for like 20 years, but like, this isn't that situation. Shrek was still prominent, even long before, after, 9 years after the original film. And yeah, they decided just to bring this in, and it's like, the only reason why, and let's face it, the only reason why people went out to see it is because they thought it was going to be the last ever movie. And like, this was going to be the last time ever we were going to see Shrek on the big screen. And now we know that's not going to be the case.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris Meledandri.
Okay, so yeah, Shrek Forever After, just boring. Nothing.
Yeah, and it has the weakest villain of the series, and a villain that should be defeated so easily by other minions who are clearly just as powerful, or not even more powerful than Rumpelstiltskin, because the only way he can gain power is if he forces people to sign his contracts, and other than that, he has like literally no power. So, yeah, the witches are more stronger than him. The Pied Piper is more stronger than him. The ogres that were introduced in the movie, which could have had really fleshed out characteristics, and it could have been really interesting into, hey, where were the other ogres this entire time? But we never really get that answer. And it could have really been a great opportunity if Fiona was the main focus. But no, it was just a big opportunity wasted.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like a weaker version of like, remember that side villain from Resident Evil 4? Like, he's like, I can't remember what his name was, but...
you mean the guy with the knife?
The shrimpy guy who walks around with those 2, like, really scary-looking dudes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's like, I can't remember exactly what his name was, but he used to, what was it, it's like, Mr. Kennedy. Like, like, isn't terrorism a popular word these days? That guy,
Okay.
Yeah, and so, yeah, just, we're done with this movie, really, so, boring. Boring.
Boring. Yeah. It's boring, very truly boring. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, so, number 3 in our top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films. This film got an average score of 3.0 out of 10. It now has a final score of 3.1 out of 10. It's Home.
Oh, God, this movie was such a mishmash of, like, what were they thinking? Like, you have this cute little alien, and he's a part of a bunch of aliens that have taken over the world and have controlled people into putting them into a specific location. You have a little girl who misses her mom, and then you have the alien and the mom and the girl trying to find the mom, and the alien is really annoying, like, just like you want to punch him. Oh man, this movie is just so...
Yeah, the 3D animation gets you to the point where you feel like you're more playing a video game than you're actually watching a movie at some point. It's like it doesn't feel like it has any soul to it or anything like that. I mean, it's all that as well. Like the guy who they made the main character, we hate him. Like, you know, like
Yes.
an insufferable, you know, protagonist. And then, you know, the person who we thought should have been the main character of this obviously was not. And so it was false advertising from the get-go, at least in my opinion. So, you know, he's like, I would rather have seen her first and had more of an understanding of her background long before we met the aliens. And then that alien thing should have been the side character, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like if you made E.T. the main protagonist.
I know, exactly. It's so, I mean, I would have rather followed Little Girl around, you know, and had her as, like, you know, being the main person in this movie, but she wasn't. And so it's ridiculous. And, you know, just, on top of that as well, like, you know, I remember that scene where, like, she would have had him, like, freeze to death. Like, you know, I would have just done that, just had it be the end of the movie, you know? So it's like, yeah, but, whatever, I mean, like, it's just, I mean, it's all that as well, like, they try to make it where it's like, oh, well, this is supposed to be kind of like, you know, a somewhat nod to slavery, like, you know, what, you know, African-Americans went through. It's like, you know, it's just, but it's still bad, you know, it's like, you know, tell a compelling story if you're gonna, you know, encapsulate these types of things, you know? So,
yeah, exactly. And if you want to see a DreamWorks film that involves with, you know, corporate consumerism, if you want to see like slavery, like people being treated like lower class citizens and taken advantage of, watch Ants. I mean, Ants was able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, Home, terrible. We didn't like it at all. So
it was really bad. And you know, just want to give a quick disclaimer one more time. We have not read the book. We don't know how close it is to the book. And maybe the book is better, but the movie did not want me to read the book.
No, exactly. Absolutely not. So, okay, number 2 in our top 5 worst list. This had an average score between me and Patricia of 3.0 out of 10. It now has a final score of 2.8 out of 10. It is The Boss Baby.
I knew that this was going to be on the bottom because, my God, this movie is so terrible.
Thoroughly and utterly deserved, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, you know, oh, hey, we're going to have a baby that kind of resembles, like, probably, at the minute, like, the worst presidents I can think of at the minute, and who looks like that. And then you're going to have him played by the guy who reminds us of that terrible president. And then you're going to have him do all sorts of crazy Tex Avery, like, cartoon shtick, which I believe is not actually kind of true to the book in any sense. And then you're going to have, like, all this kind of, like, you know, imaginative craziness from this 7-year-old who's clearly not just on Ritalin, but probably on crack too. You know, like, and, you know, some of the characters also as well, which I felt like should have had more prominence on the screen, were just kind of left on the side. Like Wizzy, for example. I'd rather have seen kind of like more influence from him, really, rather than just kind of like being tagged onto the side in his bedroom. You know?
Yeah.
It just feels like, you know, in regards to, you know, the whole joke of them flying to Las Vegas and, you know, everything there, and this whole war that seems to be going on. We're seeing this whole thing that seems to be going on between puppies and babies. Like, I really thought when that was first being introduced in the trailers, I thought that was going to be, it's going to be cats and dogs. You know, it's going to be that thing, it's the story again. But nope. Yeah, we ended up with something far worse. And oh my goodness, that scene where Timmy gets nailed in the balls. Like, you know, it's just like, yeah. That's etched in my mind right now. That's just crazy, you know?
Yeah, and we don't even know if this really happened because it's told from Timmy's perspective, and then it's like flash back and forth throughout the beginning and the end of the movie, and then at the end, we kind of see what the Boss Baby looks like in his adult, and it could have happened, but we don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it just is, and so... Yeah, again, we've not read the book, so we have no idea what the book's like, but we can definitely say The Boss Baby as a movie is awful. So.
It's really bad.
Yeah. Okay, the number 1 worst DreamWorks animation film. Me and Patricia gave it an average score of 2.0 out of 10. It ended up with a final score of 2.4 out of 10. It's Shark Tale.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like, was there ever any doubt?
No, I don't think there was ever any doubt at all. To be honest with you, actually, there was a bit of doubt of when the scores were being added up, because at some points, actually, you know, before, obviously, we had like the mad rush of people who came in to obviously, you know, do the DreamMachine form. I mean, at one point, Shark Tale was actually not as bad as Boss Baby and Home. It was actually third at one point, but then obviously people chimed in once we told people the deadline, and then all of a sudden, Shark Tale obviously ramped up the scoring. But so Shark Tale thoroughly deserved, in my opinion, to be the worst DreamWorks film. I mean, it's just Will Smith. Like it's I would say it's like, imagine if the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air went on for so what season is The Simpsons currently on at the moment?
Season 30 something.
Yeah, imagine if the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air got to season 39. Okay, I'm sure this is what the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air would have turned into. Basically, they've all just more evolved into fish. And this is basically, and the episodes have got really, really bad because obviously all the original people who wrote the episodes have left, and Will Smith has got older.
Yeah. So we would have had Will working at a car shop, wanting to do something more, and then his girlfriend would come along, give him money to help him out. He decides to sell it off like an idiot, loses the money, then he has to deal with the mafia, and then he helps one of the mafia members turn a new leaf, and then all of a sudden it just turned into wacky shenanigans.
Exactly. It would be kind of like, the finale. It would be kind of like, if Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had a movie or something like that, So it will be something along those lines, something just really crazy, and even the celebrity voices don't sell it, don't save this. The jokes are just really bad. The one-liners are no good from these people, and it's just a complete and utter mess that they've given us. And also the way it looks just looks sickly as well. And those characters designs will not. I mean, here's the thing. Finding Nemo had a really good idea of character design, and they were working with fish, for crying out loud. And here you got Shark Tale, and they tried to basically morph the celebrity faces into them, and they look absolutely awful.
Yeah, this is what happens if you take the concept of Finding Nemo and then turn it into a movie that just only focuses on the celebrities. You don't really care about the story, and animation, kids will watch anything. Let's just put it all together into this cash grab, this obvious cash grab to Finding Nemo, a much more superior movie, mind you.
Yeah, keep in mind, there's a reason. Finding Nemo got a sequel, and there's a reason there's no sequel to this movie yet. And it's because it really is that bad. And Angelina Jolie is basically just your throwaway, broad in this, pretty much gold digger kind of thing.
And Renee Zellweger is your throwaway girlfriend. Same thing that she would be in B Movie, and. There's just so many characters in here that you don't really care about, like the Jamaican jellyfish and the boss and the mafia guy. I mean, Jack Black.
That's actually Robert De Niro as well. The guy you have in a mafia film.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, throw in Joe Pesci and you pretty much just complete the cliche.
Yeah. They try and play these guys to their strengths, but they don't really. I don't think they really get a good concept of that. And I think if anything, it just feels more like you just wish a Conqueror out of Conqueror's Bad Fur Day would just come and murder them all with a chainsaw. Again, Shark Tale, probably the worst DreamWorks animated film we've probably ever seen.
Yeah, it hurts in so many ways. It hurts as a fact that it's ugly looking. It hurts as a fact that it has really not great characters. It doesn't really have a great plot. The music is not really that good. And just overall production-wise and presentation-wise, it's just an ugly mess. So there's a reason why people still to this day claim Shark Tale to be the worst DreamWorks film. Even it's been almost 15 years since this film came out, and people have still claimed it as the bottom of the barrel in DreamWorks. Even after DreamWorks has gone under so many times, even after DreamWorks has lost so much money with various films over the past 10 years, even after the switch over from distributing their films from 20th Century Fox to Universal. Yeah, this is definitely DreamWorks' lowest point.
Out of interest, any of the actors that appear in this film, besides Jack Black, did any of them actually go on to do another DreamWorks film?
Well, as mentioned before, Renee Zellweger, she did B Movie.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there's others, but not that I can really think of on the top of my head.
No,
because Will Smith never did anything afterwards, and neither did Robert De Niro or Angelina Jolie. So yeah, I think that besides Renee Zellweger and Jack Black, nobody else did any DreamWorks films ever again.
Yeah, I tell you what, and I think it just kind of undercuts basically Will Smith's acting career, unfortunately, at this point, because yes, he has done those notable film roles, but let's face it, like his right now his best role, financial wise, has been the remake Aladdin at this point, and he's not done anything better than that.
Oh man, and lest we forget, we still have that upcoming secret spy movie that's going to be coming out where he turns into a pigeon. Well, I'm sure that'll be fantastic.
Well, that's Blue Sky Studio, so we don't give a shit about that. But
I know.
I know. Yeah. So anyway, Shark Tale, worst film of all time. Don't see it. Don't bother. Just leave it alone. And Shark Tale, not even once. Okay, so we're going to mention the dishonorable mentions. Because there were some other people who were edging for these top 5, so we'll give you a list here. So those ranking between 10 to 6 was Joseph's King of Dreams, The Penguins of Madagascar, Shrek the Third, B-Movie, and Over the Hedge.
Oh man, those were really, some of them were really close to being like genuinely awful. Like we criticize Over the Hedge to hell.
Yeah.
And
here's the thing about this though, because I feel a bit safe. I mean, can we really say Joseph King of Dreams can be fairly be told to be the 10th worst, DreamWorks movie, really? Because I mean, keep in mind, it was direct to DVD. It didn't have the financial muscle that The Prince of Egypt had behind it. And so, I mean, I don't think it really had a fair chance, I think, to be kind of up there with all the other DreamWorks films.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fair because, first of all, it is the only direct-to-video movie that DreamWorks has ever done. And also, we already talked about the behind-the-scenes issues that King of Dreams had, in which there were, deleted scenes, and some of the people left the project. So, yeah, we can tell that there was some massive issues. And also, it was, severely, harshly criticized when the film came out because it was compared to Prince of Egypt. They're saying the animation and the epic scale is nowhere near close to it, and some of the music is nowhere near close to it. And yeah, I mean, I understand that, direct to video, I mean, you have to take what you get, but even we said that the formula was starting to become a little bit tired afterwards when, looking into the Prince of Egypt and Joseph. And Joseph is technically the prequel to Prince of Egypt because this takes place right before Prince of Egypt, because Joseph and his brothers were the ones responsible for the Jews going into Egypt during the famine.
Yeah, I mean, in the way this movie is kind of presented, you can definitely tell the budget was just so low for this as well. I mean, you were crying. I mean, I criticize, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron being kind of a Bryan Adams music video, but how much would that movie have been lifted if Bryan Adams was singing throughout it?
And even with I constantly compared Spirit to Tarzan in his presentation because with all the music from Bryan Adams was very similar to the music from Phil Collins, in which he's singing what's going on in the scenes and all that stuff. Which I even said that the animation in Spirit was absolutely gorgeous, and the way of its storytelling was a risk taker that DreamWorks would never do again because subtlety, what's that?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, movies like that, I mean, obviously we kind of strayed away from Joseph King of Dreams, but I mean, I think the thing with Joseph King of Dreams is that, I mean, can you actually remember any musical number from that film?
No, not even close.
No, and on top of that, it's just I can barely remember. I mean, I can remember something the scenes where how he grows a tree in prison, and which is kind of how on earth did he do that?
I mean, remember that, I would say that when it comes to comparisons to the Bible, there are some, I would say that that Joseph King of Dreams is just as close to the Bible as Prince of Egypt. They didn't take as much liberty. Some of the stuff that you did see, such as when Joseph was bragging to his brothers about his code, to the fact that he was put in the ditch to be sold to the travelers for a few pieces of silver, to the fact that he was in prison, to interpreting the dreams, and all that stuff, that actually did happen in the Bible.
Yeah. So, and besides, I mean, is there any other comments we have on any of the movies? I mean, obviously we criticize Over the Hedge to hell, and I criticize B-Movie for obviously just being obviously just Seinfeld, and then Shrek the Third. I mean, it wasn't as bad as Shrek Forever After. I mean, I know some people say it's worse than Shrek Forever After, but Justin Timberlake did somewhat of a good job as King Arthur. in this. And
Yeah,
so,
and also I thought that the concept of, Shrek being afraid of being a father, it made a lot of sense because, he didn't have a really good upbringing. And then also there was, Prince Charming, and the fact that he gathered all of the villains from the classic fairy tales to combat Shrek was, it sounded like something that should have been in the last movie as opposed to like the third installment.
exactly, yeah, yeah, it just made a lot of sense for him to kind of like do that, really, and like kind of bring everybody in. So. Those are the dishonorable mentions, and so I know we're putting off giving everybody our thoughts on the best top 5 DreamWorks animation films, but I do have to bring up the another section that we had in the last time we did one of these for PixMix, and that is the participation awards. So,
all right.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly mention them all from bottom to top. These include. So by the way, these are the movies that are rated between 5 to 6 out of 10. And so, as a final score, and also kind of like our scores as well. So, these include, from bottom to top, Puss in Boots, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, Turbo, Captain Underpants, The First Epic Movie, The Croods, Flushed Away, and Megamind.
Yeah, some of those, they do deserve the rating, and others I felt that they could have been a little bit higher.
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking of doing a series around this kind of thing, but we're not going to talk about it too much until we're ready to announce it. But I mean, I think maybe one or two of these movies, maybe we might revisit. For that series, I don't know. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, I loved how fun it was. I just felt like there was just so much holding it back, though. I thought, and I guess they were trying to kind of make it somewhat continuity to the original show that was on the TV, back in the 1960s or something like that. But keep in mind, I mean, like who in that generation I think is still. I'm not saying that there isn't anybody else still alive in that, but who was there who watched the original TV show will be actually going out desperate to actually go see this movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, to be quite honest. I mean, it's very similar to how I know some people who took their kids to go see the Smurfs because they grew up with the Smurfs, and it didn't turn out as well as they thought it would be. I mean, trust me, there are at least some, people who grew up with various shows and then take their kids to watch it because it was based off of something that they grew up with.
Mm-hmm. And Turbo actually surprised me, to be quite honest with you. I was expecting Turbo to be like absolutely phenomenally terrible, but no, it did actually kind of like. I did actually like the characters, and I did like the finale of him trying to just get up on his own while this guy trying to drag his car over.
I thought it was actually really interesting too, because I thought it was just going to be like a massive Cars ripoff, but no, it was more like a Ratatouille clone.
Yeah, it was, but the one thing that did disappoint me a little bit was that, I mean, did we really need a villain in Turbo when you really think about it? It would have made more sense to be kind of like if the guy turned around and said, "Oh, hey, well, I've supported you this entire time, but keep in mind when we get on that track, all that goes away, and you have to prove yourself to me." And have a dark moment in that. And it's like, oh wow, he is really now, he's become the supporter, but now he's become the threat in that way. Well, there's kind of like this, I'm going to beat you because and the only reason I'm doing this is because of money and blah 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 blah. Generic villain quote. I just felt like it should have been more like he is somewhat still his friend, but he's kind of like frenemies, if you will. Kind of he's like, oh, I'm friend with you now, but when it comes to the track, that's going to be completely different. Mm-hmm. And I kind of go in that direction, but that's just me. Captain Underpants, I sat through 30 minutes of it, and this again, when I watched this film, I had to kind of take breaks while watching it because it just isn't my kind of movie. I'm sorry. I know there's some people who grew up with Captain Underpants, and I know kind of love it to pieces and that, but it just felt obnoxious. Just watching it all. And probably the only thing I really like about Captain Underpants is the fact that Weird Al Yankovic sung the theme song.
Mm-hmm. I actually like it more than you did, probably because I already knew what I was getting into because I was more familiar with Captain Underpants. Like I was asking you before, I don't know how Captain Underpants was to the UK compared to the US, but I was actually more familiar with this series and I knew what I was getting into.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, to just show how divided me and Patricia were over this film between me and Patricia had an average score of 6.
Yes.
So,
I gave it a higher score.
Yeah, and I gave it a lower score, so that's the reason why it ended up being where it is. But, some of these movies we did pretty much agree on. I mean, like The Cruise, for example, we felt was pretty average. And,
it was just okay.
Yeah, and Flushed Away we felt could have been a lot more.
Oh, really. It should have been so much better.
Yeah, it's just too bad that. They keep in mind, Arm and Animation, DreamWorks were basically at each other's throats while this was being produced. So
and we did come up with the hypothesis that the reason why it was CG as opposed to claymation was because of the fire.
Yeah, so that was that. I think that had a very bad upbringing, I think, and so you can't really blame it for being what it was.
And there's a reason why this was the last Aardman Animation film to be distributed by DreamWorks, because after that they would go straight over to Sony.
Yeah, so. And, I mean, Megamind was pretty painfully average, too. It just felt like... they felt they could have done so much more with it.
This movie, very similar to how, Shark Tale was supposed to cash in on the popularity of Finding Nemo, and Trolls was supposed to cash in on the popularity of the Lego Movie. This really felt like it was trying to cash in on the popularity of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and with Despicable Me. It felt like it really wanted to cash in on the competition, and it didn't even pull it off well at all.
Even when they dragged in Dwayne Johnson for this as well. It's like, I probably imagine his payday probably, blasted the budget, probably. I'm surprised they even made any money from it. Those are our participation awards, and so anyway, we've delayed far enough, don't you think, Patricia? Don't you think we should tell? Sorry, you think we should tell everybody what our top 5 best DreamWorks animation films are?
Let's do it.
Okay, then cool. Let's start off with number 5. It had an average score. By the way, just to remind everybody on what the films were currently me and Patricia rated 10, it includes all the How to Train Your Dragon films, Kung Fu Panda 2, Shrek 2, and The Prince of Egypt. So let's go and see how you guys have impacted this. So here we go. The number 5 best DreamWorks animated film, me and Patricia gave it a score of 9.5 out of 10. It's not even in the 10s. And it has an average score of 9.1 out of 10. It's Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the biggest surprises I've ever seen, because when I first heard about this movie, I thought it was going to be just downright stupid. It's like, really, Kung Fu Panda? You've really gotten way below what you used to be, DreamWorks. But no, I was pleasantly surprised, and it was really, really good. Yeah,
I'm really, again, it goes back to the ratings of how you guys have really impacted this. And so Kung Fu Panda, I think, I don't, in regards to the original Kung Fu Panda, I'll accept it as obviously being a really good movie, and also Jack Black just being hilarious in it as well. And I love the 5 in this, and I love the villain. The villain's really cool too, and I just love the fact that obviously we're going to spoil territory here for a lot of these films, but when they get the scroll finally, and then it's just blank, and then it's the whole message is like, the power isn't in the scroll, the power is in you, and that whole message, and I think that's really cool. And so I definitely accept Kung Fu Panda as the 5th best DreamWorks animated film.
Yeah, the characters are great. The animation and set pieces are gorgeous. The villain is really compelling, especially since he has a backstory with the Kung Fu master. And also, it had a really great message about how if you want to be a Kung Fu master, it's all about what's inside of you as opposed to learning a whole bunch of skills.
Is that also the difference maker between the best and the worst in this? The villains. The villains that seems to have the most explanation for them seems to be ending up being the best here.
For sure, because for a lot of people, villains are the highlight of any animated film. If we look at Disney, for example, a lot of people say that the villains are the best thing about it. So with DreamWorks movies, we've had our fair share of really complex, deep villains, but the ones that really stand up are the ones that people still remember just as fondly as the Disney villains.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is number 5. Number 4. In our top 5 best DreamWorks animated films, it had an average score between me and Patricia of 10 out of 10. It now has an average score of 9.2 out of 10. It's How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Yeah, we did love the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, but we felt that there were some things that it could have been a little bit better. The story was pretty interesting, but there were a bit of cliches that held it back, and the music was it was fine, but it was nowhere near as memorable as some of the other DreamWorks films. But man, they really kicked it up with the second one.
Oh, they did, and like this felt like an epic. It really did, and like the fact that they brought in like I mean, they didn't shy away of like going into deep story elements as well, like the fact like he never knew who his mother was, and then he goes out and tries to find her, and then obviously he finds out that this entire time he's not been hunting. She's not been like a vet, someone that's been hunting dragons. She's been someone who's actually been trying to care for them and looking after like the alpha and everything. So, and on top of that as well, like you bring all these people in for like this this epic battle on this island, and like you're just engulfed in all of it as well. And oh my god, when his dad gets killed, oh, like that took me by surprise.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to happen.
No, that was definitely a thing. It definitely gave Hiccup that edge. Obviously to pick up a sword and fight. So
yeah, and that was desperately needed because in the first movie, he was seen as a weak link. He was seen as like the outsider amongst his village. So the fact that we had the second movie, he was able to grow up a little bit and he was able to become a lot more brave and heroic. It was something that was desperately needed.
Yeah, cool. Number 3 in the top 5 best DreamWorks animated films. It is got 10 out of 10 between me and Patricia, and now it has an average score of 9.3 out of 10. It's Kung Fu Panda 2.
Yeah, so everything that we said about Kung Fu Panda, basically just take what we said about How to Train Your Dragon 2 and elevate it so much more. Animation's better, story's better, villain's better. Everything about it's better.
Oh, Lord Shen is, just watching like that's like pretty much like a giant knife. Like, like it's just how scary he is to touch, let alone just to watch. Like, it's like, it's crazy watching him, and then you just like see, and the fact that he's also had he's had a say in pretty much in Poe's backstory, pretty much.
And the fact that he wanted to use the cannon to like kill all the pandas, it's kind of similar to Chinese history in which the cannons were kind of like used to win against the wars in China.
Mm-hmm. And so and just the fact that obviously everyone does get their part in this movie, but the 5 are kind of like a little bit put on the side really, and just kind of like they're just to help Poe out.
Yeah, that's true. It was a little bit disappointing that the Furious Five didn't really get as much of development or service to the plot compared to the first movie. But man, they made it up with Poe's backstory.
Yeah, they did, and it was just you're engulfed by just everything that's going on in this movie, like Poe's evolution into becoming the Dragon Warrior. It just continues on from like the first movie. And he has to mind you that I still get a laugh out of when he's trying to monologue to Lord Shen, and like he's just up and out of the way, and no one can hear what he's saying. And it's like, what's he saying over there? He's the fact that he like keeps the seriousness and the hilarity like in tandem, like yin and yang, like it's brilliant. Like it's I would definitely recommend people go and see it.
Yes, I do indeed. And it's actually funny, because we're talking about the sequels and we've been praising them, but it's actually really hard to say about whether you should watch it in its entirety or just watch like the second one as your first.
I don't know, that's one thing I probably would say about Kung Fu Panda. Can you really watch the second without watching the first?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
No, I don't think I would say watch them all in kind of like the same way I would say How to Train Your Dragon, and I would say saying exactly the same thing about them too. So,
yeah.
But okay. Number 2 in the 5 best DreamWorks animated films. It got a average score between me and Patricia of 10 out of 10. It now has an average rating of 9.6 out of 10. It's How to Train Your Dragon.
Well, I guess we'll have to talk about it again. Now, personally for me, I would have preferred the second movie a little bit higher than the first, but I guess maybe because nobody really expected this movie to do as well as it did, because let's be honest. When you hear talks about like a animated fantasy movie, how many have you had that really like was critically praised?
Yeah, not very many really, but in regards to, keep in mind, How to Train Your Dragon. There's one thing that people I know love so much, and because it kind of speaks out to them. Do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
The underdog story.
Yeah, yeah, it has a great underdog story. You know, basically Hiccup is, as mentioned earlier, Hiccup is the outsider, the weakest amongst his village. Everybody wants to kill off the dragons. He's just like the one who kind of tinkers with everything and doesn't want to kill the dragons. And then eventually he finds ways to befriend them, and then eventually he starts getting love from his village when they think that he's finding a way to defeat them, like cruelly. And then we have that really, impactful scene in which his father is really close to disowning him. So I thought that was actually really good.
Yeah, I mean, it has a gripping drama. It has, it has its comedy as well, no doubt about that. And the fact that he tries to, bond with Toothless rather than like, try and, rat him out or kill him or anything like that. The fact that he has like this, these feelings towards, this monster that basically he managed to shoot down, and no one believes him. And so instead he just starts trying to like heal him up and ride him and stuff. It's a really epic story in that regard. And the whole thing with all the dragons as well, like at the very end of it all, and it gets to the point where the Night Fury has to save Hiccup, and not only that, like not only he saves him, like I mean he tries his best to save him, but obviously he doesn't save all of him, and so he ends up with like his signature leg. Pretty much
Right.
his prosthetic, and so I mean the fact that it goes, the fact that it's even it's kind of like it talks with itself in a way. I think is very very powerful, and the fact that it brings in the family drama into it as well, and what the village is going through, and what Hiccup's father's going through, and what the fact that Hiccup himself doesn't feel like he's measuring up to what his father sees in him, like all of this, it's so captivating to watch, and it should be up. I mean, I'm trying to think what awards it won. I don't know if we ever talked about that in the original podcast. I don't know if we did.
I don't know. I have to look it up again because I think that we did talk about like how it was nominated for like Golden Globes and then the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. I'll probably have to look it up again.
Yeah. Okay. Right, before we get to number one, shall we talk about the honourable mentions, just to give them a bit of a mention? And so I'll do them from bottom to top. So this was 10 to 6, pretty much in the in the list, and so it goes like this: Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, Chicken Run, Shrek, The Prince of Egypt, and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World.
Those were excellent choices. Very close.
Yeah, and by the way, 2 of them actually have 10, but the other ones have 8.5 to 9. So in our average score, but everyone else gave them between 9 and 8. So those are the honourable mentions that we have there. So I mean, shame that Prince of Egypt didn't get any higher, but I guess
I was surprised that it didn't get any higher.
Well, keep in mind,
right.
I think Martin Short and the comic relief, I think kind of like I think stuck out kind of a bit like a sore thumb, really. And
fair enough.
On top of that as well, I think there's many. I mean, the problem with Prince of Egypt is that there are some people who absolutely love it. There are some people who feel it's kind of blasphemous because obviously it's like it's a depiction of Moses, and some religious folks are not very happy with that.
Yeah, and we did mention about how this film was banned in various countries.
Yeah, it was. But Shrek obviously didn't make the top 5, even though it's like it was the one that kicked it all off.
I guess maybe because the other films do it, one other film did it better, but I guess maybe some people have been arguing and putting on many debates about saying that the original Shrek doesn't really hold up as well as it should have been back then.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really sad that Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit didn't end up on there, because Wallace and Gromit is a phenomenal film, and the fact that it's one of the very few stop-motion animated films out there to actually get up there and get a theatrical release.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Chicken Run is currently the highest grossing stop motion film ever made.
Absolutely. And did I hear somewhere that they were thinking of like doing something with Chicken Run again?
Yeah, they were going to do a sequel. I haven't heard anything about it since.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to figure out what's going on there. Maybe it might be. I'd be very surprised if it's licensing issues, because Aardman Animations owned the license, as far as I'm aware, for Chicken Run. Whether DreamWorks is having a dispute about that, I'm not too sure.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
maybe that is the reason why. Also, I just found the list of best animated feature films of 2010. Toy Story 3 won over How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay, cool. So we know about that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think maybe you're right. I think because of the maybe the distribution rights and maybe the fact that DreamWorks is now owned by Universal, maybe it's having some difficulties.
Okay. So those were the honorable mentions, and so, yeah, I guess we're going to move on to the number one, what you all and what we consider the best DreamWorks animated film. So, Patricia, are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Okay. Me and Patricia gave this an average score of 10 out of 10. It now has a final score of 9.8 out of 10. It's Shrek 2.
I mean, that's really surprising considering that some people still make fun of Shrek for being incredibly ironic and just all the memes, but yeah, I mean there's a reason why some people still fondly remember it.
Well, here's the thing about this. I think it's probably the best sequel of nearly the best sequel of all time. I would have a dispute over whether it's better than Toy Story 2. I'll have to work on that, but in regards to a movie following on from a huge success, it could have gone another way, couldn't it? I mean, they could have, been played it very safe with it and probably just kind of, played around with the original characters. But no, they went out there and they said, well, not only is there, Shrek in the swamp and this, other world that he exists in, but there's Far, Far Away and, the world of Happily Ever After. What does that look like, And so, obviously, it brings you to this kind of Hollywood scene of just really out there and you just feel like you're taken out of your comfort zone whilst being there because obviously it's Hollywood, pretty much, and so I think it's very clever in how it does that, and also as well, the fairy godmother is a phenomenal villain. I think we can all agree.
Yes.
Yep. And then also, reprising their roles, Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Cameron Diaz. I mean, all three of them do a phenomenal job in this as well. And also, it's it kind of brings back to not only to its own original story, but also it throws back to the original plot of Shrek, where they talk about because Fiona obviously turns back from an ogre to herself, to a human form. And then obviously Shrek, turns into a human in this, and so obviously there's this massive. They're going through this massive conflict of that, and then also there's the whole plot going on about the true love's first kiss again, and then there's also Rupert Everett's performance in this, which I think is really good as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John Cleese, Julie Andrews, everybody does a phenomenal job.
Yeah. And the great thing about this, though, is that they're not just grabbing these celebrities just because, obviously celebrities. I mean, they are people who actually do fit, what this movie is about. I mean, John Cleese being in a Shrek film, I think is a phenomenal casting because obviously, he's the guy out of Monty Python's Flying Circus and Fawlty Towers. These comedy routines are built for this guy.
Yeah,
and so
and it's actually funny because I think if I remember, back in the early '90s, John Cleese turned down the role of Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast, and the reason why is because he decided to choose to play as the villain from American Tail, Five Goes West. And then when he saw the huge success of Beauty and the Beast as opposed to Five Goes West, I think he tried to kind of make it up for that huge mistake. I believe I remember some interview from a long time ago saying that was probably one of the worst decisions he ever made in his career. And he tried so many other animated roles since then, such as Jean Bob from Swan Princess and some of its other sequels, and he never could really nail it. But I think him playing as the king in Shrek 2, I think that was definitely one of the best decisions that he has made, and I think it definitely made up for the fact that he never got to be in Beauty and the Beast.
I don't know, it's probably not the worst thing that anyone's ever done in regards to that. I mean, keep in mind, Will Smith turned down playing Neo in The Matrix to go play a cowboy in Wild Wild West.
True.
There's worse other decisions that actors have made.
You know how John Cleese is.
But yeah, I mean, and on top of that, Shrek is now, this propelled Shrek pretty much into, popular culture. If Shrek, the original movie, hadn't done already, we still even talk about Shrek to this day. We're going to be talking about him pretty much again in a bonus episode that's going to be coming up. So definitely stay tuned for that. But I mean, the fact that he's in meme culture, the fact that he's in, everyone pretty much knows who he is. At this point. You mentioned Shrek, and people are like, oh yeah, the ogre from the swamp, and from that movie. even those Vegas people who don't really watch all that movies that well, at least know who Shrek is at this point. So.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. As much as Ants and Prince of Egypt were like phenomenal films, as well as the other, some of the other 2D animated films were a mixed bag. Shrek was the one that put DreamWorks on the main highlight. They were the ones that, people compared constantly to Pixar. This was when Disney was at its lowest point, that nobody was really caring about what Disney was doing anymore. And DreamWorks and Pixar were at their main competition, creating some of the most influential 3D animated films out there. And so many films try to cash in on the Shrek popularity. Happily Never After, Hoodwinked, and so many others to count. So, yeah, there's a reason why people still remember Shrek fondly. And Shrek 2 is definitely a major part of it. The soundtrack is actually one of the best soundtracks DreamWorks has ever done, whether it be like the instrumental music or the soundtrack, the music they got for the soundtrack. The characters are much more fleshed out. The jokes hit spot on almost every single time. There's great references, great new character additions, and the climax is absolutely wonderful. Just everything about this movie just works.
Yeah, and it does give me it definitely gets a laugh out of everybody at the very end of the film when like Pinocchio gets turned into a real boy, and like he's like he goes, I'm a real boy, and like, oh my god, everyone just starts laughing at that point. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. And so yeah, I mean, like Shrek 2, I mean, what else can we say about it? It's like it's a phenomenon, pretty much. Like it's probably the best sequel to a movie ever produced.
And that's really tough, too, because Kung Fu Panda 2, How to Train Your Dragon 2, they've all been absolutely phenomenal.
Exactly. And so DreamWorks, I mean, obviously, maybe that gives us some hope for Trolls World Tour. Maybe the sequel probably will be better. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because DreamWorks have a track record of making it better.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, we also, I think that the weakest, like, second installment was Madagascar 2, because we thought that it was a little bit overstuffed.
Yeah, I think it was to the point where it's like, it didn't even make participation awards. Like, I tell you what, funny enough, through this entire podcast, we've never talked about Madagascar at all in these top 5 best or top 5 worst. So wow. It's like that's probably like one of their biggest money makers, I imagine.
Yeah, it was their biggest moneymaker. I mean, out of all the franchises, it was the one that got like a ton of merchandise. It had the TV series from Nickelodeon, and it had the spin-off movie, The Penguins of Madagascar. So yeah, for a while, it was like one of the biggest franchises out there. Yeah, well,
Penguins of Madagascar actually made one of the dishonorable mentions. So yeah, there was a mention for them there, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So, that is pretty much the end of Dream Machine, at least until we go to Abominable. So, by the way, just because we end the series over here now doesn't necessarily mean that when as long as DreamWorks and as long as Pixar and as long as these other companies we're covering keep making movies, we're still going to do Dream Machine and we're still going to do Pixmix. So, don't worry about too much about that. So, I want to thank Patricia for doing this wonderful series with me. And,
thank you for having me.
No problem. And I'm looking forward to, obviously, going on forward with whatever we go forward with. So, but until we get to that point, until we make those announcements, thank you very much for all of you going through Dream Machine, and thank you very much for all going on this wonderful journey with us. So, from me, Aaron.
And Patricia.
Until Abominable, take care, and bye-bye for now.
See you later.